Ethan Cole walked briskly through the bustling streets of Manhattan, his tailored suit contrasting sharply with the chaos of the city around him. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm glow over the throngs of people. Street vendors called out, their voices mingling with the honking of taxis and the distant sound of construction work. Yet, despite the vibrant life surrounding him, Ethan felt a profound emptiness gnawing at his insides. He was a successful businessman in his mid-30s, known for his sharp mind and relentless drive. However, beneath the polished exterior, there lay a chasm of discontent. Ethan's thoughts spiraled around an upcoming business deal that had the potential to elevate his company to new heights, yet he felt no excitement. Instead, an unsettling feeling of dread loomed over him like a storm cloud. He had achieved everything he had ever wanted: wealth, status, influence. But a lingering void haunted him. What was the cost of his success? As he turned a corner, his attention drifted momentarily from the flickering screens of stock prices and business projections that filled his mind. But as fate would have it, this momentary lapse would change the course of his life. He stopped abruptly, his eyes falling upon a figure huddled against the cold, hard concrete of a nearby building. The woman was wrapped in a tattered blanket, her hair matted and unkempt, her face weathered by the elements. She seemed to blend into the shadows, a ghost among the living, yet something about her compelled him to look closer. Ethan's heart raced as he stepped a little closer, driven by an inexplicable pull. The woman's eyes, a striking shade of blue, seemed to shine with a mixture of sorrow and resilience. He squinted, trying to make sense of the emotions swirling within him. There was something familiar about her, something that tugged at the edges of his memory. He hesitated, his breath hitching in his throat. Could it be? No, it was impossible. "Hey, are you all right?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. He approached cautiously, as if the ground beneath him might crumble at any moment. The woman looked up, her gaze piercing through the layers of grime and despair. For a fleeting second, a flicker of recognition sparked in her eyes. "Please, just leave me be," she whispered, her voice hoarse, tinged with a note of defeat. Ethan shook his head, a mix of emotions swirling within him. "I can help you," he offered, though he wasn't entirely sure how. "What's your name?" "Sarah," she replied, her voice barely above a murmur. As she spoke, a shiver danced down Ethan's spine, and he felt a wave of emotion wash over him. The name echoed in his mind like a distant memory, one that had been buried under years of pain and confusion. "Sarah?" he repeated, incredulous. "Sarah Cole?" The recognition dawned on him like a bolt of lightning. His heart pounded in his chest as the pieces began to fit together. This was his mother, the woman who had vanished from his life when he was just a child. He had spent years wondering what had happened to her, searching for answers in the cold, unforgiving world of business, yet here she was, right in front of him, unrecognizable and lost. Suddenly the world around him faded away. The bustling street, the blaring horns, the distant laughter, all of it vanished into the background as Ethan struggled to process the reality before him. "Mom," he breathed, the word escaping his lips before he could stop it. It felt foreign and familiar all at once, a name that had haunted his dreams and filled his nightmares. Sarah flinched at the sound of that word, her expression morphing from weariness to fear in an instant. "No, you shouldn't be here," she stammered, scrambling backward against the wall as if trying to retreat into the shadows. "You don't know me. You don't want to know me." Ethan's heart sank. He took a step forward, desperate to bridge the chasm that had opened between them. "I do know you. I've been looking for you for years. I thought you were dead." His voice cracked, revealing the vulnerability he had kept locked away for so long. "Looking for me?" Sarah's laughter was bitter, a broken sound that echoed in the empty space between them. "What do you think I am? Some lost treasure waiting to be found? I'm nothing, Ethan, just a ghost of the past. You're better off without me." "Better off?" Ethan echoed, incredulous. "How could you say that? I've spent my life wondering what happened to you. I was just a kid when you disappeared. I had no idea if you were alive or dead." The air around them thickened with silence. Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her expression a mix of sorrow and regret. "I had my reasons for leaving, Ethan. You wouldn't understand." Ethan felt a rush of anger, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "Try me. I'm here, aren't I? After all these years I found you, and you just want to push me away." "No, you don't get it," she snapped, her voice rising. "You don't know what it's like out here, the streets, the people. I'm not the mother you remember. I'm not even the person I used to be." Ethan's heart ached at her words. He wanted to reach out, to touch her shoulder, to reassure her that it was okay, that they could navigate this together. But he felt like a stranger in this moment, a man confronting a ghost. "I don't care about who you are now," he said, his voice softening. "I just want to understand what happened to you. Please, let me help you." Sarah's expression shifted, flickering between hope and despair. "Help?" she echoed, the word heavy with history. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Then tell me," Ethan pleaded, his eyes locking onto hers. "Tell me what happened. Give me a chance to understand." In that moment, as they stood amidst the chaos of the city, Ethan felt the weight of years of silence pressing down on them. The world continued to rush by, oblivious to the profound moment unfolding. He was desperate for connection, for answers that had long eluded him. The past had a way of creeping back, swirling their lives together in a way that could no longer be ignored. "Ethan," Sarah said finally, her voice trembling, "it's not that simple. There are things I can't explain, things I wish I could take back." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm of emotions within him. "I'm here now," he insisted. "Just give me a chance to help you. We can figure this out together." But as he uttered those words, uncertainty flickered in Sarah's eyes. The shadows of her past loomed large, and as much as he wanted to reach for her, he felt the pull of something darker lurking just beyond the light of their reunion. And in that instant, everything shifted. The foundation of their lives, built on years of separation and silence, felt fragile, ready to crack beneath the weight of hidden truths and unspoken fears. As Ethan stood before his mother, a whirlwind of emotions swirled within him: hope, anger, love, betrayal, each fighting for dominance. In the heart of Manhattan, the stage was set for a confrontation that would unravel the tangled web of their shared history, igniting a journey neither of them had anticipated. Ethan stood frozen, the cacophony of the city around him fading into a dull hum as reality crashed in. The woman before him, weathered and worn, with hollow cheeks and eyes that spoke of despair, was the ghost of his past, the mother he had long mourned. The air was thick with unspoken words, the weight of their shared history pressing down on them both. He felt anger bubbling beneath the surface, twisting in his gut like a serpent. "Why?" he finally managed to croak, his voice a mixture of hurt and disbelief. "Why did you leave me, Sarah? Why did you disappear?" Sarah's gaze fell to the ground, her fingers trembling as she wrapped her arms around her knees. She seemed smaller than he remembered, a mere shadow of the woman who had once filled his life with warmth and laughter. "Ethan, she began, but the words caught in her throat, choked by a lifetime of guilt and regret. "Don't you dare say my name like you still have the right to," Ethan snapped, his frustration boiling over. "You vanished when I needed you the most. I spent years wondering what happened to you, if you were dead or alive, if I was just abandoned." A flicker of pain crossed her face, and she looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to leave you. You have to believe me. It was never my choice." "Then what was it?" he pressed, his heart racing. "Tell me the truth. What happened? Why were you gone for so long?" Silence enveloped them, a heavy shroud that swallowed their words. Ethan's mind raced as he searched her face for any sign of the mother he once knew, but all he saw was a stranger cloaked in misery. Finally, she took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I made mistakes, Ethan. Terrible mistakes," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I got caught up in things I didn't understand, things I thought I could handle. I didn't want you to see me like this." "What things?" he demanded, his patience wearing thin. "You could have come back. You could have reached out. I was waiting for you." A tear slipped down Sarah's cheek, glistening in the dim light of the alley where they stood. "I thought I was protecting you," she said, her voice breaking. "You wouldn't have understood. I didn't want you to suffer because of my decisions." Ethan's anger faltered, replaced by a wave of confusion and hurt. "What decisions? What could possibly justify leaving your child alone?" She looked up, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I was struggling with addiction, Ethan. I lost everything, my job, my home, and I lost myself. I didn't want you to see me like this. I thought it would be better for you if I just disappeared." The confession hit Ethan like a physical blow. He had always imagined scenarios where she had been taken away or lost in some tragic accident. But this was different. This was a choice that had irrevocably altered the course of his life. "Better for me?" he echoed incredulously. "You think abandoning me was better for me? I grew up in foster homes, wondering if my mother was dead, if I was worthless. I had to fight for everything I have now." "I know," Sarah replied, her voice thick with regret. "And I'm so sorry. I can't change the past. I wish I could take it all back, but I was too far gone. I thought I could clean myself up and come back for you, but I kept falling deeper. It was like a black hole." Ethan turned away, his heart racing with emotion. His childhood memories flooded back, birthdays spent alone, the ache of yearning for a mother's love, the gnawing feeling that he was unlovable. "And now?" he asked, his tone softer, almost pleading. "What do you want now? Do you want me to just forgive you and pretend everything is okay?" "I want to explain," she said, desperation lacing her voice. "I want you to understand why I did what I did. I want to make it right, if I can. But I need you to be willing to listen." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Ethan felt a flicker of hope igniting within him, battling against the bitterness that had taken root over the years. "I'm listening," he said, though his voice was barely above a whisper. With that, Sarah took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts as they stepped into a nearby cafe, seeking refuge from the biting wind outside. The bell above the door chimed, and they found a small table in the corner, away from prying eyes. The chatter of patrons filled the air, but for Ethan, it felt as if they were encased in their own bubble, the world outside fading into the background. As they settled into their seats, an awkward silence fell between them. Ethan watched Sarah as she fidgeted with her hands, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. He felt a surge of sympathy for the woman who had once held him in her arms but now seemed so fragile and lost. "Ethan," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I wish I could tell you that everything was fine, that I had a good reason for what I did. But the truth is, I spiraled out of control. It started with just a few drinks to cope with the stress, and then it became something I couldn't manage. Before I knew it, I was in over my head." "What kind of stress?" he asked, leaning in, eager for answers. What could have been so bad that you thought disappearing was the only solution? Her gaze dropped to the table, and for a moment, Ethan feared she might shut down again. But then she looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of resolve and dread. "Your father," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was abusive, Ethan. I tried to protect you from him, but I didn't know how. I thought leaving was the only way to save you." Ethan's heart raced as he processed her words. The father he barely remembered, the man who had cast a long shadow over his childhood. Could it be true? "You left because of him?" he asked, the realization sinking in like a stone. "Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you come back?" "I was scared," Sarah admitted, her voice breaking. "I thought if I could just escape, I could find a way to make things right. But I lost myself in the process. I never meant to hurt you, Ethan." The tension in the cafe felt suffocating, and Ethan could hear the faint sound of his heartbeat in his ears. "So you chose to leave me with him?" he said, the bitterness creeping back into his voice. "You chose to let me suffer." "No, I thought I was protecting you," she cried, desperation lacing her words. "I couldn't let him hurt you like he hurt me. I thought if I could just get away, I could come back. I had plans, dreams of a better life for us, but then everything spiraled out of control." Ethan's heart ached for the woman before him, but resentment still lingered. "And now? What do you want from me now?" he asked, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside him. "I want to be a part of your life again," she said, her voice trembling. "I want to make amends, to show you that I can be better. But I understand if you can't forgive me. I don't deserve it." Before Ethan could respond, the bell above the cafe door jingled again, and in walked Rebecca, his assistant. Her eyes immediately locked onto Ethan, concern etched across her face. "Ethan, I've been looking for you everywhere," she said, her voice rising above the cafe's chatter. Ethan felt a rush of tension as he turned toward Rebecca, who had been his anchor in the corporate world and his confidant in personal matters. But as her gaze shifted to Sarah, the air thickened with unspoken words and fear. "Who's this?" Rebecca asked, her tone cautious. Ethan glanced at Sarah, who was now visibly tense, her hands clenching tightly around her coffee cup. "This is Sarah," he said hesitantly, unsure how to introduce the woman who had once been his mother but was now a stranger. Rebecca's expression shifted, concern deepening as she processed the implications. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her eyes darting between Ethan and Sarah. Ethan felt a wave of frustration wash over him. He had finally begun to peel back the layers of his mother's tragic story, and now, with Rebecca's unexpected arrival, the fragile moment shattered. "We were talking," he replied tersely, his voice betraying his irritation. Rebecca frowned, sensing the tension crackling between them. "Ethan, I need to speak with you. It's important," she insisted, her voice low and urgent. "I can't right now," he snapped, turning back to Sarah, who looked as if she might crumble into dust at any moment. "I need to understand. I need to know what happened." "Ethan," Rebecca pressed, her tone sharper now. "This isn't just about you. We have a situation that needs your attention. Please, let's talk outside." But Ethan was torn, the desire to uncover the truth battling against the urgency in Rebecca's voice. Sarah's fearful glance told him everything he needed to. Ethan sat across from Sarah in the dimly lit cafe, the air thick with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. The clinking of cups and the murmurs of patrons faded into a blurred backdrop as he leaned forward, eyes fixed on her, searching for the answers that had eluded him for so long. Sarah, once vibrant and full of life, now appeared fragile, her hands trembling slightly as she cradled a lukewarm cup of coffee. "Why did you leave?" Ethan asked bluntly, his voice low yet filled with a desperate urgency. Why did you disappear without a word?" Sarah's gaze dropped to her cup, her fingers tracing the rim. "Ethan," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "I didn't want to hurt you." "Didn't want to hurt me?" Ethan interrupted, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "You vanished. Do you realize how that felt? I was just a kid." She looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I know it was selfish, but the truth is, I was lost. I didn't know how to handle my life, my choices. I thought it was better for you to be away from me." "Better for me?" His heart raced, a mix of anger and confusion coursing through him. "You think being abandoned was better? I spent years wondering what happened to you, thinking I must have done something wrong." Sarah's expression hardened for a moment, her lips pressed together in a thin line. "You didn't do anything wrong," she replied, her voice steadier now. "It was never about you. It was about me and my failures." Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing the bridge of his nose as he tried to process her words. He could see the pain etched in her features, a reflection of the turmoil that had consumed her life. "But you could have reached out. You could have let me know you were okay," he urged, his voice softer now. "Instead, I grew up in a world without you." "I tried," she said, her tone pleading. "I tried to find the strength to come back, but every time I thought about it, I felt the weight of my past bearing down on me. I didn't want to bring that burden to you." "Then tell me about it," Ethan pressed, his heart pounding as he fought to keep his emotions in check. "Tell me what really happened." Sarah took a deep breath, her gaze drifting to the window where the city buzzed with life outside. "It was a series of bad choices, Ethan. I got involved with the wrong people and things spiraled out of control. I lost my job, my home, and then I lost myself in the process." She paused, her voice trembling. "I turned to substances to escape, and before I knew it, I was on the streets." Ethan's heart sank as he listened to her confession. "You didn't have to do it alone," he said gently. "I could have helped you. I wanted to help you." "But you didn't know," she shot back, her eyes flashing with a mix of anger and sorrow. "You were a child, and I didn't want to drag you into my mess. I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" Ethan felt a surge of frustration. "You didn't think I had a right to know the truth? That I could have supported you?" "Ethan, you don't understand," she said, her voice rising slightly. "The truth is complicated. It's messy. I thought if I just disappeared, you'd have a chance at a better life. I wanted you to succeed without the shadow of my failures haunting you." Ethan shook his head, his chest tightening with a mix of emotions. He thought of his childhood, the moments filled with laughter and love that were overshadowed by her absence. "You're wrong," he said quietly. "Your absence has haunted me every day. I need to know the full story. I deserve that much." Just then, the bell above the cafe door jingled, and Rebecca walked in, scanning the room until her eyes landed on Ethan. She approached their table, her expression shifting from concern to surprise as she took in the tense atmosphere. "Ethan, I've been looking for you," she said, her voice laced with urgency. "We need to discuss the Henderson deal." Ethan shot her a look of annoyance, his mind still tangled in the conversation with Sarah. "Can't it wait?" he snapped, his frustration boiling over. Rebecca hesitated, glancing at Sarah before continuing. "I understand this is important, but we have deadlines to meet. The team is counting on you." "Right now, I'm counting on my mother," Ethan said, his voice firm. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of revelation. He turned back to Sarah, who looked as if she were about to disappear again, retreating into the shadows of her past. "Maybe we should continue this later," she suggested quietly, her eyes darting between Ethan and Rebecca. "I don't want to cause any more trouble." "No," Ethan said, determination creeping into his voice. "You're not a trouble. You're my mother, and I want to understand everything. Please just give me a little more time." Rebecca nodded, sensing the gravity of the moment. "I can wait outside," she said gently, her tone softening. "Just call me if you need anything." As she stepped away, Ethan turned back to Sarah, who was now visibly shaken by the sudden shift in their conversation. "I don't want to lose you again, Sarah," he said, his voice earnest. "Not after finding you. Please, tell me everything." Sarah swallowed hard, her expression shifting as if she were weighing her options. "Ethan, there are things I can't share. Things that could put you in danger," she cautioned, her voice trembling. "Danger?" Ethan repeated, his heart racing at the thought. "What do you mean? What happened to you out there?" "It's complicated," she said, her eyes darting around the cafe as if searching for an escape. "There are people I was involved with. They're not the kind you want to cross." "Just tell me the truth," he urged, desperation creeping into his voice. "I can handle it." Tears spilled from Sarah's eyes as she shook her head. "You don't know what you're asking for, Ethan. Trust me, it's better for you if you don't get involved." Ethan felt a mix of anger and helplessness. "I can't just turn my back on you again. I won't do it," he insisted. "You're my mother, and I want to help you." Sarah looked at him, her expression a mixture of fear and love. "You don't understand the risks," she said softly. "If they find out I've spoken to you, they won't hesitate to hurt you." Ethan leaned closer, his voice low and fierce. "Let them come. I've faced challenges before. I'm not afraid." She shook her head, a look of despair crossing her face. "You don't know what you're saying. You think you can handle this, but you have no idea what you're getting into." Ethan's resolve only deepened. "Then help me understand. I want to know everything, even if it's painful. I can't move forward until I know the truth." For a long moment they locked eyes, the weight of their shared history hanging heavily between them. Finally, Sarah took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping as she prepared to reveal the secrets that had haunted her for years. "Okay," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "But you have to promise me that you won't get involved. You have to promise to stay safe, no matter what." Ethan nodded, his heart racing with a mix of fear and determination. "I promise. Just tell me what I need to know." But before Sarah could begin, her gaze flicked over Ethan's shoulder, her expression shifting to one of terror. "Ethan, we need to leave, now." His pulse quickened as he turned to see a group of rough-looking individuals entering the cafe, their eyes scanning the room with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. In that moment, Ethan understood that the shadows of Sarah's past were closing in, and he was caught in the crossfire of a story that was far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Ethan Cole sat in the corner of a dimly lit office, the scent of stale coffee mingling with the worn leather of the furniture. The detective's office was cluttered with papers and case files, a testament to years of hard work and unresolved mysteries. Detective Harris leaned back in his chair, his grey hair catching the fluorescent light above. Ethan's heart raced as he awaited the news about his mother, Sarah. "Look, Ethan," Harris began, his voice steady and grave. "Your mother was reported missing for years. The case went cold. We had no leads, no witnesses, just a name and a face that faded from memory." Ethan clenched his fists, a mix of anger and sadness surging through him. "But she's alive. I saw her. She's living on the streets, and I need to know what happened to her." Harris nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I understand. But the truth is, the streets can be unforgiving. People fall through the cracks, and sometimes they want to be lost. You have to prepare yourself for what you might find. Ethan took a deep breath, his mind racing with questions. Can you help me? I need to dig deeper into her past. There has to be something, any clue that can lead me to her. Harris sighed, leaning forward. I can pull up the old case files and see if there's anything we missed. But Ethan, you should be careful. Sometimes the past can bite back. As Ethan left the detective's office, the weight of his mission settled heavily on his shoulders. The bustling streets of Manhattan felt different now. The vibrant city he once adored seemed shrouded in shadows. Every passerby was a reminder of the life his mother had lost, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was diving into a rabbit hole he might not be able to escape. The next few days blurred together as Ethan delved into his mother's past. He spent hours at the police precinct, poring over old case files, newspaper clippings, and missing persons reports. Each detail he uncovered painted a picture of a life he had never known, a life filled with struggles and secrets. He learned about Sarah's childhood, her strained relationship with his grandparents, and the mounting pressures that ultimately led to her disappearance. "Ethan, you've been at this for days," Rebecca said, concern etched on her face as she peered over his shoulder at the chaotic spread of documents on his desk. "You need a break." "I can't," he replied, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I need to find her. There's got to be more to this story." Rebecca sighed, her tone softening. "You're not just looking for answers for her, are you? You're searching for closure for yourself." Ethan paused, her words cutting through the fog of his obsession. "Maybe, but I can't ignore what she's been through. I just want to understand." As he continued his investigation, Ethan stumbled upon a name that stood out amidst the clutter. Margaret Cole, his estranged grandmother. A woman he had only known through whispered conversations and distant memories. He discovered that Margaret had been a formidable matriarch, a woman whose wealth came with expectations that suffocated those around her. Sarah had never fit into that mold, and as Ethan pieced together the fragments of their family history, he began to understand why she had fled. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of research, Ethan found himself standing in front of a nondescript building in a seedy part of town. The address belonged to a friend of his mother's, someone who might hold the key to understanding the choices Sarah had made. With a mixture of trepidation and determination, he knocked on the door, his heart pounding in his chest. A few moments later, the door creaked open, revealing a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a wary expression. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice low and guarded. "Are you Linda?" Ethan asked, his voice steady despite the nerves bubbling within him. "Depends on who's asking," she replied, crossing her arms defensively. "I'm Ethan Cole. I'm looking for my mother, Sarah. I need to know what happened to her." Linda's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing her features. "Sarah's boy? I heard she had a son, but I didn't think you'd come looking for her." Ethan stepped forward, desperation creeping into his tone. "Please, I just need to know. What happened to her? Why did she disappear?" Linda hesitated, her eyes darting away as if weighing the consequences of her words. "It's not pretty, Ethan. Your mother, she was in a bad place. Drugs, debts, family drama. She thought she was protecting you by leaving." "Protecting me?" Ethan echoed, anger flaring within him. "By abandoning me?" "Ethan, it's complicated," Linda said, her voice rising slightly. "Your grandparents were ruthless. They would have done anything to keep her away from you. She thought she was giving you a better life by staying away." Ethan's mind raced as he processed Linda's words. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, forming a picture of a woman who had been trapped by circumstances beyond her control. So she chose the streets over me, over being a mother. It wasn't that simple, Linda insisted, her voice softening. She loved you. She still does. But she was drowning, and she thought it was for the best. I wish I could say more, but Sarah, she's in deeper than you realize. Ethan felt a mix of confusion and anger. What do you mean? Let's just say there are people who don't want her to resurface. She got caught up in something dangerous, and it's not just about her addiction. There are debts, threats, things that would put you in danger too if you get too close. The weight of Linda's words settled heavily on Ethan's shoulders. His quest for answers was transforming into a perilous journey, one that could cost him everything. "Where is she now?" he demanded, his voice low and fierce. "I don't know," Linda replied, shaking her head. "But if you find her, promise me you'll be careful. The world she's in is not forgiving, and neither are the people who know her story." Ethan left the building feeling both enlightened and lost. The revelations about his mother's past were heavier than he anticipated, and he knew he had to tread carefully. He couldn't let fear dictate his next steps, but he also understood the risks involved in his pursuit of the truth. Returning home, he sat on the edge of his bed, staring blankly at the wall. The promise of hope that once fueled his search flickered dimly, overshadowed by the weight of the secrets he had unearthed. He thought of Sarah, his mother, the woman who had disappeared from his life, wondering what had led her down such a dark path. He reached for his phone, his fingers hovering over Sarah's contact information. He wanted to call her, to reach out and bring her back into his life, but the fear of what he might uncover held him back. Instead, he decided to gather himself, to think clearly, and to prepare for whatever lay ahead. But as he lay in the darkness, his thoughts spiraled with the realization that his quest for answers could lead to more than just the truth about his mother. It could unravel a web of family secrets that stretched far beyond what he had ever imagined. And as he drifted into an uneasy sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was still out there, lingering on the edges of his world, waiting for him to bridge the gap between their fractured lives. Ethan Cole paced anxiously in his sleek office, the skyline of New York a glittering backdrop to his turmoil. His mind reeled with thoughts of his mother, Sarah, and the cryptic note she had left behind. The words haunted him, shadows of a past he was only beginning to understand. Determined not to let despair take hold, he turned to Rebecca, his trusted assistant, who had been a steady presence through the tumultuous waves of his life. "Rebecca, I need your help," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper, betraying the turbulence within him. Rebecca looked up from her laptop, her brow furrowed with concern. "What's going on, Ethan? You look like you've seen a ghost." "It's about my mother. She's gone, and I can't just sit here waiting for her to return," he replied, his hands clenching into fists. "I need to find her." "Okay, what do you want to do?" she asked, her voice steady. "I think we should start at the shelters. She might have reached out for help. There has to be someone who's seen her," Ethan suggested, his determination igniting. "Let's get to it," Rebecca agreed, grabbing her coat and heading toward the door. As they stepped out into the bustling streets, the noise of honking cars and chattering pedestrians faded into the background. Ethan's heart raced, not just from the urgency of the situation, but from the unshakable feeling that time was slipping away. They visited several shelters, each one a small world of its own, filled with stories of resilience and despair. The air was thick with the scent of unwashed bodies and the faint aroma of cheap coffee. The first shelter they entered was dimly lit, with volunteers moving about, attending to the needs of those seeking refuge. "Excuse me," Ethan approached a weary-looking volunteer. "I'm looking for my mother, Sarah Cole. Have you seen her?" The woman shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir. We can't give out information about our guests, but if she's been here, she might have left a note or something." Ethan felt his heart sink. "Thank you. But if you happen to see her—" "Of course," the volunteer replied, her eyes softening. "I'll keep an eye out." After several more attempts, they left one shelter only to find another. Each encounter was heavy with unfulfilled hope, but Ethan clung to the belief that they would find her. Hours turned into a long afternoon, the sun dipping lower in the sky, casting an orange glow over the city. "Let's try the community center next," Rebecca suggested, her voice laced with a tinge of optimism. As they made their way to the center, Ethan's mind raced with thoughts of Sarah. He could barely fathom the life she had been living, the choices she had made, and the reasons she had for leaving. It was as if a chasm yawned between them, filled with years of lost connection and unspoken pain. At the community center, the atmosphere felt more hopeful. Families gathered for meals, laughter mingled with the clatter of dishes, and children played in the corners. Approaching the reception desk, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. "Hi there," he said to the young man behind the counter. "I'm looking for my mother, Sarah Cole. She might have come here for help." "Sarah Cole?" the young man repeated, tapping his fingers on the keyboard. "Let me check our records." As Ethan waited, he exchanged a glance with Rebecca, who offered an encouraging nod. The young man's face suddenly brightened. "I think I remember someone by that name. She was here a couple of weeks ago, but I haven't seen her since. You might want to check with some of the local outreach programs. They might know more." "Thank you," Ethan exclaimed, feeling a surge of renewed adrenaline. "By the way," the young man continued, "there's a support group meeting later tonight. Sometimes people come in looking for help or just to talk. It might be worth checking out." "Where is it?" Ethan asked, his heart racing. "It's just a few blocks down. They start at 6, the young man replied. "Let's go," Ethan urged, grabbing Rebecca's arm. As they hurried toward the meeting, Ethan's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. What if she was there? What if he saw her, and she turned away? He pushed the doubts aside, focusing instead on the flickering flame of hope that had ignited within him. When they arrived at the community room, a small group of people sat in a circle, sharing their stories of hardship and resilience. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he scanned the room, searching for a familiar face. "Maybe you should introduce yourself," Rebecca suggested quietly, her eyes scanning the crowd as well. Ethan took a deep breath, stepping forward. "Excuse me, everyone," he said, his voice firm but tinged with anxiety. "I'm looking for someone. My mother, Sarah Cole. If anyone has seen her." A woman sitting in the circle looked up, her eyes widening. "Sarah? I know her. She was here a few weeks ago, talking about some tough times she was going through." "Do you know where she is now?" Ethan pressed, hope surging through him. "She mentioned something about needing to leave town for a bit. Said she was trying to get away from some bad influences," the woman replied, her brow furrowing. "I didn't think she was serious. She had talked about getting her life back on track." "Do you know where she went?" Ethan asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "I'm not sure," the woman replied, glancing at her companions. "But there's someone, an old friend of hers, who might know more. She used to talk about him a lot." "Do you have a name?" Rebecca interjected, her voice sharp with focus. "Yeah, I think it was Charlie Jenkins. He used to look out for her back in the day," the woman said, nodding. "I think he still hangs around the old neighborhood." Thank you so much," Ethan breathed, feeling the weight of the world lift slightly from his shoulders. As they left the community center, Ethan turned to Rebecca, determination etched on his face. "We have to find Charlie. He might know where she is or what happened to her." "Let's do it," Rebecca replied, her eyes sparkling with resolve. They set off to find Charlie Jenkins, their spirits buoyed by the prospect of finally uncovering the truth about Sarah's disappearance. With each step, Ethan felt a flicker of hope rekindle within him. Little did he know that the path ahead would reveal secrets best left buried, dark ties that bound his mother to a past he was only beginning to understand. As they reached the neighborhood Charlie was rumored to frequent, the atmosphere changed. The streets felt heavier, shadows loomed larger, and the air thickened with a sense of foreboding. Ethan's instincts screamed that they were on the brink of uncovering something significant, something that would change everything. "Are you ready for whatever we find?" Rebecca asked, her gaze steady. "More than ever," Ethan replied, steeling himself for the revelations to come. The night was still young, but the darkness ahead promised answers that would either heal old wounds or deepen the scars. As they prepared to confront Charlie, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to step into a world far more complicated than they had ever imagined. Ethan Cole sat across from Melissa, the old friend of his mother, in a dimly lit diner that felt like it was stuck in the past. The walls were adorned with faded photographs of old New York, the air thick with the scent of grease and nostalgia. Rebecca sat beside him, her gaze fixed on Melissa, who shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows that enveloped the table, amplifying the weight of the secrets that hung in the air. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Ethan asked, his voice steady but edged with frustration. "I've been searching for answers about my mother for weeks, and this is what you offer me?" Melissa's eyes darted around the diner as if the other patrons might be listening. "Ethan, you don't understand. It wasn't just about hiding an inheritance. Your mother was involved in something dangerous. I thought she was just trying to protect you, to keep you out of it." "What kind of danger?" Rebecca interjected, her tone sharp. "You're saying she was part of a scheme. What scheme?" Melissa leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "There's a family fortune, yes, but it's tied to some powerful people. Your mother, Sarah, she got mixed up with a group that wanted to take control of that fortune. They were ruthless. I think she tried to escape them, but they found her." Ethan's heart raced as he processed the implications of Melissa's words. His mother had been a victim not just of her circumstances, but of a far more sinister plot. "What do you mean they found her? Is she in danger now?" "I don't know," Melissa replied, her voice trembling. "But I heard whispers, people saying that she owed them money, that they wanted retribution. If she's been hiding, it's not just to stay off the streets, it's because they're looking for her." Rebecca reached for Ethan's arm, squeezing it gently as if to anchor him. "We need to find her, Ethan. Now." Just as Ethan was about to respond, his phone buzzed violently on the table. He glanced at the screen. An unknown number flashed before him. His heart dropped. "It could be her," he said, urgency flooding his voice. "Answer it," Melissa urged, her eyes wide with concern. Ethan swiped the green button, putting the phone to his ear. "Hello?" "Ethan, it's me." Sarah's voice came through, frantic and choked with fear. "You need to listen to me. They're coming for me. I don't have much time. You have to help me." "Mom, where are you?" Ethan's mind raced, his heart pounding in his chest. "I can't say, just, please, you have to trust me. I need you to find the truth about the inheritance. It's more than you think. They're not who you believe them to be," she said, her voice trembling. "Who? Who's coming for you?" Ethan pressed, desperation gripping him. "I can't explain it all over the phone. Just meet me at the old warehouse on 5th. You have to hurry." Before he could respond, the line went dead. Ethan lowered the phone, his breath hitching in his throat. "She's in trouble," he said, looking at Rebecca and Melissa, urgency painted across his features. "We have to go." "Ethan, wait," Melissa said, her voice a mixture of concern and caution. "If there are people after her, you could be walking into a trap. You don't know who you're dealing with." "I don't care," Ethan shot back, his frustration boiling over. "She's my mother. I can't just sit here while she's in danger. I need to find her." Rebecca nodded, her resolve matching Ethan's. "We'll go together. We can figure this out. Just be careful." They hurried out of the diner, the autumn chill biting at their skin as they stepped into the bustling streets of New York. Ethan's mind raced with thoughts of his mother. The fear in her voice haunted him, and he felt a sense of urgency that he couldn't shake. The warehouse on 5th was located in an industrial area surrounded by crumbling brick buildings and the remnants of a past life. As they approached, Ethan's heart raced. The place looked abandoned, its windows shattered and covered in grime. It felt like a ghost of what it once was, and the eerie silence sent chills down his spine. "Stay close," Rebecca whispered, her eyes scanning the surroundings for signs of danger. Ethan nodded, his instincts kicking in as he stepped cautiously toward the entrance. The door creaked ominously as he pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit interior filled with dust and shadows. The stench of mold was overpowering, and he had to fight the urge to cover his nose. "Mom!" he called out, his voice echoing in the empty space. "Are you here?" No answer came, only the sound of water dripping somewhere in the distance. He felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "She wouldn't just leave," he muttered, pacing further inside. "She wouldn't." Rebecca moved closer to him, her brow furrowed with concern. "Ethan, maybe we should call the police. This doesn't feel right." "No," he replied, shaking his head. "If she's hiding from someone, the last thing she needs is more attention. We'll find her ourselves." As they moved deeper into the warehouse, Ethan spotted a flicker of movement out of the corner of his eye. He turned sharply, but it was just a rat scurrying away from the light. He felt a surge of frustration. "Mom, where are you?" he shouted again, anger and fear mixing in his voice. Then something caught his attention, a piece of paper fluttering on the ground near a stack of crates. He rushed over, kneeling to pick it up. It was a note, hastily scribbled and stained with something dark, perhaps coffee or something worse. "Ethan," he called, his voice trembling as he unfolded it. "It's from her." "What does it say?" Rebecca asked, stepping closer, her eyes scanning the area for any threats. It's a warning," Ethan read aloud, his heart sinking as he deciphered the hurried handwriting. "Ethan, if you're reading this, it means you're close. Trust no one. They're watching. I love you. Find the truth." His breath hitched. What does she mean, they're watching? Who? What truth? Before he could ponder further, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse, causing Ethan and Rebecca to jump. The sound came from the rear, followed by hurried footsteps. "We should go," Rebecca urged, her eyes wide with fear. But before they could move, a shadow loomed in the doorway. A figure stepped into the light, a sneer plastered on his face. "Looking for someone?" Ethan's blood ran cold as recognition hit him. It was a man he'd seen in the diner, a man who had been sitting at the bar watching them closely. "You!" Ethan shouted, stepping protectively in front of Rebecca. "What do you want?" The man chuckled darkly, his eyes glinting with malice. "Oh, you're in way over your head, Ethan. Your mother's past is more complicated than you could ever imagine. And now you're involved." Ethan felt the weight of the threat hanging in the air, and he knew they were standing on the precipice of something dangerous. "Where is she?" he demanded, his fists clenched. The man shrugged, a mockingly casual gesture. It's not about what you want, kid. It's about what she owes, and you're just another pawn in this game." Ethan's mind raced, the pieces of the puzzle scattered and chaotic. He had stepped into a world shadowed with secrets, and now the stakes were higher than ever. As he stood there, he realized he had a choice to make: confront the darkness of his mother's past, or walk away and risk losing her forever. With a deep breath, he took a step forward, determination filling his heart. "I won't let you harm her. I'll uncover the truth, no matter the cost." The man's smile faded, replaced by a cold glare. "Good luck with that." With a swift motion, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Ethan and Rebecca standing there, alone and uncertain, the weight of the truth pressing down on them like a heavy fog. Ethan's heart raced as he looked at Rebecca, fear and resolve intertwining in his chest. "We need to get out of here. Fast." They turned to leave, but as they made their way back towards the exit, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were closing in around them, and that the danger was only just beginning. The secrets of his mother's past were rising to the surface, and he was determined to confront whatever darkness lay ahead, no matter the cost.